Does the GTR have all-wheel steering? It's something I've pondered ever since I've gotten this car. You see hints of it on the internet, but no true source of information. So that's what we're gonna do today, is figure out if it has it, how it works, and what it does. Steering is pretty straightforward. You take a steering wheel, you turn it left, the front tires turn left, and your car turns left. Pretty straightforward. Let me show you on the RX-7. This is front wheel steering only, but sometimes you realize that there are certain aspects of steering that are involved that you didn't know existed. So this is kind of a quick run through of what steering is. I'm currently taking the steering wheel and turning it left and turning it right. And so you see down there, you see a knuckle, you see a universal joint as it goes from the steering wheel down to the rack and pinion steering rack. The rack turns the left and right rotation into left and right motion, which the most important part about this is right up here. You've got these, on the rear they'd be called toe links, on the front they're tie rods. You see that tie rod bar that in the front of the tire holds the tire or pushes the tire left and right. Right here's a perfect example. A nice little JDM spare from an RX-7. Normally, on two different types of suspension, you've either got double wishbone, which is upper and lower control arm mounts. A lot of words here, but most English is words, is that you've got upper and lower control arm mounts that the tire pivots off of, which is what you see the motion back and forth like this. The magic behind steering is that there's a third control arm. There's a third linkage, which is called a tie rod, that is what's pulling and pushing the wheel left and right. So on the front tires, that is connected to a steering rack. On the rear though, this is what blew my mind when I was engineering the four-rotor. On the rear, you still have that same component of your suspension. It's just a bar that's mounted to the chassis. So you can control what's called toe in and toe out. So if you're the front of the car and you think of it like your toes, that's exactly what they're referring to. If a car has toe, it means that you've shortened this bar in this case, and it's brought the front of the toe of the tire in. On the GTR, let's see if these toe links are actually tie rods. So in the case of this GTR right here, if you're Australian, I'm not, let's take the steering wheel and do the same thing. What I'm gonna show you is the front wheels will hopefully turn. Let's see what happens to the back wheels. So even without power steering enabled or assisted, I can still turn the front wheels. With the front wheels turning, let's see if the rear wheels do anything. I don't see them moving. Do you see them moving? Okay. So what we've just found out is only the front wheels are turning when the car's stopped. Let's see if there's a reason why this GTR doesn't have all-wheel steering. Let's get under it. There's the lower control arm pivot, which allows the tire to pivot this way. The upper control arm's somewhere up there. Rear suspension gets really weird, but basically we'll think of it that way. This is the shock, the strut mount, and then sure enough here would be the toe link. Except this toe link, instead of going to just a toe, link control on the chassis or whatnot, it sure enough goes to some rudimentary steering rack. The steering rack is controlled by these two oil lines or pressure lines somehow. But this blows my mind that this is in fact a rear steering. But I am really curious as to how this operates. But sure enough, we confirm that the GTR has all-wheel drive steering. Well, that's fascinating. This car certainly does have all-wheel steering, but contrary to our previous test, sitting there turning the wheel, it doesn't activate until there's a problem. So there's only 5 to 7 degrees of turning in the rear, but they don't turn on until the sensors detect a situation where we're losing traction. So for those of you that are seeing these cars and say, hey, turn the steering wheel, I want to see the all-wheel steering, that day will never come. You'll never see them all working. So it's almost like magic, but as you saw, getting under the car confirmed exactly what people thought. Because I'm a man who loves to test things, including all my friends' patience, we're gonna test the rear wheel steering ability of this car in an unmarked location with no cars around. We're gonna set the camera up so you can see both the front and the rear wheels articulating, and to see that, given a situation where the car loses traction, to see if the rear wheels modify or adjust or do anything. So here's a couple turns with us doing it just nice and gently. And then look at this. You can see the rear wheel adjusting to the effects of the rear wheel steering. This is pretty damn cool. We didn't expect this to happen, but you can feel it. Look at the inside camera footage. It's kind of hard because, you know, you're not in the car, but the car kind of writes itself. Not only does it have the cool all-wheel drive element, but also all-wheel steering. It's pretty impressive, but it almost fights you. Like in the RX-7, you'll start turning and then you feel this like slide and it doesn't hold on to you. This kind of nannies you a little bit, but it's an older feeling. It kind of like adjusts very organically and slow. Still, one hell of an experience and very impressive that it actually works.